Hi, I'm Eric Poulin.
And I'm Robin Poulin.
We're the co-founders of Calendar Budget, and welcome to the Calendar Budget Podcast.
I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like. I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like.
Monopoly is an excellent way to teach about money.
I love that game.
It's also a good way to destroy your opponents.
Or the
And
family unity.
And cause family dissension.
Yes.
We have one daughter who is a hardcore Monopoly player, and she plays to win, cutthroat style.
Yes.
She must win, and she usually does. But there's
Then you get a couple of them.
usually one person who's not very happy by the end of the game.
And then a couple of them, they kind of slip money under the table from,
Yeah.
from the bank.
Yeah. Yeah, the banker, right? Yeah, here's a couple of 500s.
Exactly.
Anyway, we're talking about money because the topic of today is training children about money. And one of the best ways that we have found to do that is to gather the family around and get out the Monopoly board.
Actually, just the money itself.
Yeah, not to play the game. It's just to use it as a teaching implement. So we use the cash, like the pretend money, and then go with it. So if you're going to do this, and I highly recommend you do this, especially with youngish children, but this will work with young teens as well, as long as they can, put up with the hokiness of it. Mm-hmm. Get the money out, right? And I would use like all the same denomination if you can. Try not to mix, like 500s, 100s, 20s. Try to just use 20s, because there's always more 20s than anything else in Monopoly. And you really want to use the same denomination so that they can see the stack differences. Because what you're going to do is you're going to budget this money according to where it goes. What you do is you sit down and you figure out, okay, here's how much income you make in your job. So and this is a good teaching opportunity for different education levels. We'll say, you're like mommy. You're a civil engineer, and you make $90,000 a year. And you're not going to count out 90,000, but just some representative number of bills. You are some other career that doesn't make as much. Maybe you're you're a sanitary engineer. You're a garbage man.
Or you're new in life and you're starting at McDonald's.
Great idea, because they'll be of that age, so they'll see that a lot more. You're a part-time employee at McDonald's, and so you make only this much per hour, and so you're making this much, and you're maybe making $10,000 a year.
Just as a side note, quickly, you can actually get this Monopoly money from Dollarama or something like that, some dollar store.
Like refills?
Yeah, and you can actually just get a few packs of it. So if you really want to stack up certain denominations, then get a few packs and you can make it a lot easier to be able to divide the money according to what actual earned.
And it doesn't have to be money. If you're like into like pretend gambling or something, you can use chips. Anything that can represent quantity.
Yes.
That's the sameness, that you want to have like 20 or 30 of these things, and probably more would be better. Yeah. You probably want to have each person have about 20 to 30 to 50 of these bills, because you're going to have to divvy it up, right, as you go along this game. So everybody gets their income. They're not all the same. And they're going to complain about how unfair that is. Great lesson on this is how life is, people.
Everybody earns different.
And of course, you're going to explain, listen, Joe, I need to come up with better names for the kids. Pretend kids. Listen, Joe, you're not actually going to earn this much money. It's just for the example. So you may have less than everybody else right now, but that doesn't mean you're going to have less in your life. It's just for the example. Because in life, some people have less money than others.
So then if you're going to redo this example in another location, you can make sure Joe doesn't get the less money that time again.
Yeah, or maybe you do it twice in the same sitting and you say, okay, now that you've done it the first time, let's do it again and see if you do anything differently. This time, Joe is going to be a doctor. and he gets $150,000 or whatever the case may be. Yeah, be fair about it, because they're kids. At the end of the day, they're going to feel hurt by your ridiculous example.
Yeah.
But give everybody their income, and then say, okay, in real life, when you get money from a job, you don't get to take all the money that you actually earned. The government takes some of it. It's called taxes. And so everybody's going to have to give me back some of that money. And so by percent, right? So if you earned this much money, you're going to give back a certain percent. So everybody gives back 10% of their money, or whatever you come up with. Mm-hmm. It's another way of teaching them about percentages. Well, how come I only have to, the doctor, how come I have to give 10 bills away for taxes and he only has to give 1? That's not fair. Well, it is fair because
How
it's
much
a percent.
Do you have left now?
Exactly. You started with much more than them. And a good
And
example.
you still have more.
Yeah, it's a good way to teach about percentages, but that's how taxes work. It's all based on
Yeah.
taxes and maybe even tax brackets. Oh, well, doctor has to pay 20% taxes. You only have to pay 10% because you didn't have as much to start with. And they'll probably get that that's fair, a little more fair, at the beginning. So taxes, and then say, okay, now this is the money that you have left. There's things that we have to do with this money. You don't get to just spend it all. As an adult, we have to do these various different things. The first thing that we should do is pay ourselves in the form of savings, because we're saving for something in the future, a house, a car, a vacation,
Emergency.
something that's big that we're not buying right now. And so the very first thing you should do with your money is put some away for savings. Mm-hmm. And again, the doctor might save more than the McDonald's employee. Mm-hmm. But some of it should go to savings. And then, okay, now we have housing or expenses. So we're going to do this by, it'll depend how old the kids are, right? If they're very, very young, keep it really simple. And just be like housing and food. That's it. But if they're more into their teens, maybe it's housing and utilities and food and car payments,
Clothing, haircut,
clothing,
etc.
and things that will resonate with them for their age. But when they're just really young kids, like if we're talking like 6 to 8 to 10 years old, maybe just housing and food, because that's what they'll see the most. Mm-hmm. And say, okay, housing costs this much. What kind of a house do you want to live in? The house we live in costs this much. And you'd say it costs 7 of your bills. Do you have enough to pay for a house like this? No? Okay. Then you need to live in a smaller house. How small do you want your house to be? And you can talk about what that might, if you have friends that live in smaller or larger houses, or if you've seen houses, and you can just describe it. What if you wanted to live in a house that was the size of these 2 rooms put together, and that was your whole house? How much would that cost? Anyway, just come up with some of these things on the fly. Have some ideas about what makes sense in your area.
Yeah. And what it boils down to is what your family's going to need, and can you afford what your family's going to need?
Exactly. That's the whole point of the exercise.
Yeah.
And you might also say at the beginning of the exercise, okay, you're a doctor, you're a McDonald's employee, but you're both married and you have 1 child or 2 kids. Or why don't we just be like our family? And so we're like we are. And if you're a single parent, then be like, okay, you can be like, we have the same number of kids that we have. And so they can resonate with that. They know what that looks like and it feels like. So then you've got your bills for housing, and then you've got food. Oh, how much is it going to cost for food? How many times do you want to eat out every month? Do you want to eat out a lot more than we do? Wouldn't that be delicious? All right, this is how much it costs. And suddenly they have no money left. And they're like, I can't pay anymore. Well, then you can't eat out that much. And so you have to do groceries, and it's going to take you time to cook meals like mom or dad does.
Yeah.
And you go through all of this by category. So if you're keeping it very simple, just housing and food, and if you're doing it more complicated, you may have numerous categories that resonate with the children that you're doing this exercise with. Mm-hmm. And in the end, you'll have some left over, hopefully. If you don't have any left over, that's also a good teaching opportunity. If you don't have any money left over, that means 100% of your money went to pay these bills. If you want to do something fun, like go to the movies or go out with your friends, you can't do it. Mm-hmm. you don't have any money left, and it costs money to do all of these things. And no, you can't use your credit card because you need to pay for that. All of these things cost money, and if you don't have it, you can't go.
The money has to come from somewhere. One of those categories can be paying down debt, but to teach them to avoid debt in the first place.
Exactly. So that money that went out is for your needs. So this is like a needs versus wants exercise for the kids. The money that's left over, you can teach them the term for that. It's disposable income. And this is money that you can fulfill some of your wants with. And hopefully you have some left over. If you don't, again, teach them how to adjust. Maybe you can eat a little bit less. You still need 3 meals, but you don't have to eat out so much. Maybe you can buy off-brand food.
Adjusting your variable costs.
Exactly. Teach them about the various different ways that you can save for those things. Maybe you can get things on sale. Maybe there's a whole slew of techniques that we've talked about in other episodes and that you can come up with as
Getting
part of
things
your...
for free.
Absolutely.
Secondhand stores. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, if you're doing like clothes and the whole 9 yards of categories.
Yeah.
And then you may even get more complicated, like it's Christmas this month. You need some gift money, right? That's not every month. Or it's every third month we have a water bill that we have to pay. And, you can just kind of go over that depending on their age and understanding. But the idea is when they're left over with this money, and it won't be very much, just do a comparison and say, all of that money is what you earned at your job. But look how much you have left to actually buy the stuff that you want with. It's not very much. And so if you want something that's, like if you want that new iPhone, Sally, or if you want those earbuds or whatever they're called, what are they, earpods?
Yeah.
Goodness, I'm such a
Yeah.
not Apple person. If you want that expensive thing, if you want a car, you don't have enough money to buy it. You can't just buy it whenever you want. You may have to go through this exercise several times. And some of that money that you put in savings at the beginning, that'll add up over time, and then you can use some of that to pay for what you want. But you can't use all of it, because if an emergency happens, you need some of that tucked away. And this extra money that you have for spending, maybe if you want something big, you put a little bit more into your savings so you can afford this thing that you want later. Anyway, it teaches them the value of what disposable income is and how they really have to save for some of these larger items. They can't just go out and buy it. As we mentioned in the last podcast, it just looks like to kids so often that parents or adults just go out and buy what they want whenever they want it.
Yes.
They don't see this exercise that's gone on behind the scenes of saving for months and months to have enough money for this thing. So it's super, super important.
Now, something to consider is at what age do they start buying some items for themselves?
Exactly. So what would you recommend?
We did it differently as they were growing up, that maybe today you want some candy. So you earn a little bit of an allowance that you can take that to the store and buy the treats that you want. And now you get to regulate that because you paid for it. And other things like a phone or anything like that, we decided early on that if they wanted a device, that they would pay for it, because we knew with them investing the money, they would see how long it took them to earn that money to be able to buy something. So maybe they will take care of it better instead of throwing their phone across the room.
When they're angry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or even just tossing it to the bed and have it bounce off into the wall. And well, now they're without a phone.
Not that we've ever had that happen to us or anything.
Of course not. But then they learn that responsibility, and you figure with them having to pay for it that they'll take more responsibility for it and take care of it better. They'll be good stewards.
It tends to be the case when you have to sacrifice for something,
Yeah.
you take better care of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So this whole exercise opens up, as we mentioned, a whole bunch of opportunities for discussion. But really, what matters most to us? Do we value the eating out more than we value the family vacation? And what's the most fun that you have in your life? And how can we do more of that fun thing and less of the things that really don't matter that much? and where you put your money and to cover the costs for these things, and how you can scrimp and save and sacrifice a little bit here and there. It opens up a tremendous amount of really valuable dialogue between parent and child, and gets them on the same page. Suddenly they understand why you have to say no to them when they want something, and you can't always just get it for them.
And with that understanding, they start to say no themselves, realizing this money has to come from somewhere. And there's probably some other things that I want more than the new little fangled toy that's come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, this exercise is very valuable for kids who, even older kids, like I'm talking now about like mid to late teens, when they're starting to work.
Yeah, with their own money.
With their own money, when they get a paycheck, with the exception of taxes, 100% of that money is disposable income. And that is not something you want them to get used to. If they get used to that in their teen years, they're going to feel slighted and confused and disappointed and upset and all these negative emotions. Entitled, when suddenly they have all these expenses that have to be paid, right? Suddenly they have rent, they have school tuition if you're not paying for that for them, or they have food that they have to pay for, and it's not just in the fridge. And they have to pay for a car. It's not just there in the driveway that they can go drive whenever they want.
Yeah, gas and maintenance, not just the vehicle itself.
All these things, yeah. If you get used to spending 100% of your money, you're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah.
So this is a great opportunity to teach, even if you haven't gone through this exercise, but when you have kids now that are in this earning money mode, have a discussion with them about what they ought to be doing with their money. Now, they don't have all these expenses, and I'm not saying that you should put all these expenses on them.
No.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be encouraging them to save a good portion of their income, like 40 to 50% of it, and start learning to live off of a fraction of what you earn, because that's adulthood. Now, we're not trying to push kids to be adults right away, but we're trying to develop good habits. And that money is still theirs that they save. It's just you're teaching them habits that are going to serve them well for the rest of their life. Because what happens, if you save every paycheck a little bit, like maybe not a little bit, a lot, 40 to 50% at that age, because it's a lot of money to just spend. After 6 months, you could have a lot of money saved.
And teaching them along with the rule of 72, what that's going to do for them over the years with having that money saved.
Yeah. If you can get them to put it into long-term savings, I mean, all the better.
Yeah.
All the better.
And not just sitting in the checking account where it's not going to earn interest usually.
Yeah. Yeah, actually move it into another account, because they'll be tempted to spend it if it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Get a savings account, and when the money comes in, a portion of it goes into savings, and then a portion of it is disposable income.
I remember one point in life about, I don't know, probably 2 years ago, just had this idea. I'm like, an adulting moment for teaching the kids what it's like to be an adult. Had to do insurance changeover because one of them got their license. And so getting them on the phone with me, just as I'm making the call to listen in, what kind of costs come up with it, what things to consider at different stages, and just other things like that, like switching over utilities to maybe a new provider. This one's going to give us a better range, better cost, better service. So let's go with that one. And how do you handle the conversation on the phone? How do you ensure you're going to get the best deal?
Yeah, that covers a lot more than just finances, but that's, I mean, every once in a while we'll do this, and, the kids groan a little bit about it, but it's like, it's time for an adulting 101 lesson. Yeah. Come on up. We're going to call the insurance company.
Pretty good, pretty cooperative. Like, oh, okay, sure.
They don't have to do anything. They're just observing.
Yeah.
But again, kids learn by observation, and the home is the first school.
And then as things come up for them, one of them had to call about their phone bill saying, what's happening? It's not being taken out. Why? What are you going to do about this? You're going to charge me for it? I don't think so. This doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
So helping them, now we sit in the background and we listen as they handle the call and be able to prompt them as they need
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. So they learn how to not be rude on the phone, but how to be assertive but not rude.
Patient.
And patient, yes, because they're frustrated and they get a phone bill that doesn't match what they expected.
Yeah.
Angry and frustrated, and you're like, well, let's figure this out.
We'll find out what happened and what can be done about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for kids, especially the ones earning money while still living at home, and all that money is disposable, it's good to teach them about, first about taxes, because they'll actually see that. Taxes will come off of their paycheck.
Yeah.
And that they'll probably get a tax return at the end of the year because they're not making enough. They're just part-time employees. So they'll probably get a tax return. Great. So there's taxes, but your disposable income is after taxes, after savings, and after expenses. So your taxes are taken care of before you even get the money. You need to take care of your savings, first thing.
Yep.
You need to take care of your expenses, second thing, if they have a cell phone bill or whatever else that they are covering. And slowly, as they get older, kind of shifting some of that responsibility for payments over to them, like the actual payment of it.
Yeah.
Maybe they start paying for their clothes as they get a little bit older, or at least a portion of their clothes. Maybe they start paying for their cell phone bill,
Yep.
or whatever makes sense in your family. Because that teaches them responsibility. It teaches them they need to start thinking about this once or twice a month. They need to start looking and planning ahead and not just spending everything in their account.
And setting boundaries where maybe I would originally want the brand name of this, but mom and dad are only willing to pay maybe $50 of that or $20 of it.
Yeah.
Anything else I want beyond that is up to me to pay for it.
Well, that's one of the things that we do.
Yep.
Like with our older kids, they want a pair of jeans or a jacket or whatever. We'll pay the normal price. You want the super wackadoo, crazy brand price. I don't know where that word came from. But if you want to pay for a brand item that costs this much, no.
Yeah.
We'll pay the price that for a normal jacket. And if you want the brand, you pay the difference.
And occasionally it is actually worth paying the brand price because it will last 5 times longer than the other brand.
Maybe
But that's rare.
my experience is they last the same amount of time, and you're paying that extra difference for the label that has that brand name on it.
Yeah. Maybe a difference between guys and girls clothes too. Don't know.
I'm sure there is a difference,
Yeah.
but the fact that it's pricier it isn't going to change that much. I mean, at the end of the day, how much better can clothes be? I do know that clothes can be better. Don't get me wrong.
Yes.
I'm not a complete
Or
idiot
getting the
around that.
brand at the best place, at like the outlet places.
Yeah.
Then you can get what you want at a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of, after that stage, now you're an adult, but still living at home. Seen a lot of cases, heard of a lot of cases too, where this is still the case, right? They're now earning full-time income and just burning through the money every week. When the money comes into their account, gone a couple of days later.
they don't have real responsibilities to pay for their cost of living.
Exactly. And they haven't been taught to save these portions. Even if they've been taught, sometimes they don't listen because it's, at the end of the day, it's their money. You can influence them as much as you want, but you can't force them to do anything.
Yep.
Sometimes they need to learn with the school of hard knocks, and eventually they'll find out that
Yes.
mom and dad actually knew what they were talking about when they said these things.
And being there just to support, be a listening ear to walk them through, here's where you kind of set yourself up with some challenging times. What can you do to avoid it? Here's some things that we practiced that have helped a lot.
Yeah. Now our rule, and I've seen this rule shared by lots of adults, parents, if you have an adult child living at home, working full time, and not a student, time to start paying rent.
Yep.
We just started this with one of our daughters who was a student and is taking some time off school. So she's working full time
We gave her some buffer time.
living at home and not attending school, so she's in this category. Yeah, we gave her some buffer. But then we had a conversation with her, and it's like, we don't need the money, but you need to learn this lesson. That soon you're going to be out on your own, and we're not pushing you out, but it's only natural that you'll want to get out on your own. And we're going to encourage that for your autonomy, not because we're trying to get rid of you. It's not cool living with your parents forever, and we get that.
Just progress in life.
Exactly.
And you don't say, this is what the going rate is and this is what we're charging. Depending what your family needs are. We decided with a fraction of the cost.
Exactly. We looked at, we did some research ourselves and showed her the research. She probably should have been part of that research if we were perfect at this exercise. But how much would it cost for a single bedroom apartment? And we looked up 3 or 4 or 5 of these things and kind of took the average and said, this is what the average would be if you were to go out on your own. And you wouldn't have the autonomy that you have here at the house. And you'd have to pay for still your food and your car and all these other expenses on top of it. That's just for the room. And we're going to charge you not this amount. We're going to charge you significantly less than this amount, but just enough for you to start feeling what it's going to be like as an adult.
So you're prepared when you get out on your own, that you understand what it's going to be like.
Yeah, there's expenses that need to be paid. Exactly.
You still have a safety net right now to carry you when you're stuck.
Exactly. Not only rent, but this is a good time to have a conversation with the kids or the kid about, this is a very unique time of your life.
Yes.
Where you don't have any major responsibilities, you don't have a family or a spouse, or have a housing to pay for, unless it's this minimal rent amount, and you're still getting free food and everything else from us. This is a unique time in your life to save money like mad. You will never, ever have a time like this in your life, like right now.
Yeah.
After a year or 2 of this, you're going to be out on your own, because you want that, but you're going to be out on your own, and suddenly all these other expenses you're going to have to be paying for. And back to that Monopoly exercise, the amount you're left after all the expenses are paid is not much. And if you want to set yourself up for a better future, save it now.
Yes. They're going to find as well that when they feel that, because they're not going to have a push without that little bit of experience of having to pay rent or something like that, where they don't see the reason to save any money or to gain a better education. They don't have that push to want to do something about it. So that helps them get that experience and that need and want to make a better life for themselves and make a better future for their future family.
Exactly. And getting used to not spending everything is going to save them from heartache when they do make that transition. Because you don't want it to be like an overnight, I was having thousands of dollars a month at my discretionary spending, disposable income, and suddenly I have no money or $20.
Yes.
And you're like, how do you even survive? And if you've been supporting them in this hedonistic lifestyle where they just spend everything to their heart's content, if you've been supporting that and never taught them otherwise, guess who they're going to come back to when they're disappointed and heartbroken that they can't have what they want?
I need a loan, Mom and Dad.
Exactly. You don't want them coming back to you for that, for so many reasons. You can't afford it, and it's totally not cool.
It's not healthy.
It's not healthy for them in their progression in becoming an adult. And if our role as parents is to train people to become responsible adults that are self-sufficient, that training starts now.
It's seeds that we're planting, not just for them, but for their next generation after them and after, because what we teach now will continue throughout generations unless one of the generations learns something and carry on a new tradition.
Exactly. Now, we talked about them putting some money away in this unique, special time of their life. If you can get them to put some of that in long-term savings that they can't touch, like an investment, and teach them that this is money not for 6 months from now or a year from now, this is money for 30 years from now.
Yeah.
If you can teach them that, they'll have money benefiting from compound interest since they're like 20 years old or earlier.
Yeah.
And their money will have opportunities to double more than once over that time.
Yep.
And if they keep contributing to it, again, keep going back to that saying, if you live the first 10 years of your life like no one else will, you'll be able to live the rest of your life like no one else can. And that'll be the case.
And remind them about the rule of 72 with their investments of how long it takes for their money to double. And we talked about that previously as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to teach by example. And this very physical example of getting the Monopoly board out and showing them is going to be a game changer for their understanding. And for your adult children or getting close to adult children living home, give them little tastes of what it's like to be an adult and start transitioning some of the expenses over to them so that they get a feel for what it's like to be an adult.
And those little tastes as well could be planning for a vacation. You can get the Monopoly money out again to say, we have this much money for the vacation. Here's the different things that are going to cost, the lodgings, the food, the entertainment, the travel. And so now that the Monopoly money is here, how can we divide it up to be able to enjoy what we want to enjoy?
Exactly. Get creative with it.
Yep. Or with your budget. This is how far it's stretching. How can we get more money into our vacation budget by changing what's happening in other categories so that you can increase that fun with the vacation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get creative with it. Get the physical implements out. And that'll go a long, long way in solidifying these really important lessons at a young age.
Yeah. It's visual. They can understand better then.
Exactly. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to actually do the real teaching about money. We've talked somewhat about that today. We're going to get into it more deeply next week. But until then, happy budgeting.
I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like. I can pay cash, I can pay check, I can pay wire transfer, I can pay gift card, I can pay credit, I can pay anything you like.